Man, Luxray looks so cool on here, and then there's this stupid rhino being in the way. Like, what's he doing there? Hey guys, this is Game Account. We're looking at another Pokemon TCG history video. This time on Legends Awakened. Apologies, this has taken a little bit to come out. Honestly, midweek testing was a bit rocky, to say the least, and PTCGO has been distracting me a little bit, because I managed to snag some code stuff in that. Sai is actually collecting some of the stuff in real life as well. So he gave me a bunch of codes, I bought a bunch more so I can play a few different decks because we were pretty close. I pulled like a 3-2 Zoroark V, the V-Star, so it was like, okay, let's just get a few packs and actually be able to play that deck. So probably be doing some PTCGO stuff. Don't know if I'm going to do YouTube videos on that again, we'll see. But I don't think there's much I can do that's like new for that, really. Other people are much better at it. But what we can do is talk about this old set over here, Legends Awakened. We are in the brand new format now. It is only Gen 4 cards, so we no longer have access to the double rainbow energy, scramble energy and such. So a lot of these are going to be context sensitive in that aspect. I think if you are attacking for more than 2 energy, you're going to have a very hard time in this set. But I will still go over all of the relevant stuff I can find anyway. There's a ton of cool cards in here, some Pokemon making their first debut like Magnazone over here, but I don't know, we'll have to see. There's a lot of cards in here though, 146 in total, so let's just try and go over stuff as much as we can. We'll start with the trainers because there's actually a fair few of them, and with only maybe one exception, these cards are like all kinda nuts. The one exception really is Bubblecoat. This card is the weakness card. I forget exactly what it was called in Aquapolis, but it's the one that you attached. It wasn't actually a tool, I don't think, at the time either. You attached it, it prevented you from taking weakness damage, but it discarded itself at the end of the turn. This one's slightly better because it discards at the end of a damaging attack from the opponent rather than from anything, but it also discards if you get like sniped on the bench too. There's a lot of really bad situations for this thing, like you can't preemptively attach it in case you get snipped, which is pretty dumb. And yeah, weakness is really annoying and definitely kind of crippling still, even at like plus 30 etc, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Most attacks are going to two-shot you anyway, so yeah, really not a good card here. Plus it's a tool and we just lost Castaway, so good luck finding it when you actually want it, you know. Bugs training, Professor Kukui Light. This draws 2 cards just like Kukui did in Gen 7, but your active only does 10 more damage instead of 20, because the numbers are not nearly as high at the moment, right? We don't have 240 HP Pokemon running around all over the place, so we don't need the plus 20. But it's still pretty good. I believe Sai is going to be playing Gliscor Lucario today, and he played a ton of this card in there, because it's just a really good math fixer. This and Plus Power together, we can do quite a lot with that. Don't expect it to stay in the format, because it is a bit weak as a supporter, but for now, with our limited options, it's pretty good. Cynthia's Feelings is also really good. Funny enough, this is the Ken Sugimori like artwork, but it really doesn't look like his normal style, so kudos for that, I suppose. It's a really nice one. Yeah, Cynthia's debut is pretty good. Shuffle Draw 4 is bad, obviously, because we weren't playing Professor Oak and stuff in that Shuffle Draw 5. But if you if you suffered a KO from the opponent last turn, doesn't matter how you suffered the KO either. It could be from, you know, snipe damage in the middle of the turn. Just so long as something was KO'd on the opponent's turn, you draw 8 instead. The way around this is like poison damage. If you are poisoned, that's KO'd in between turns, so it doesn't do that. But yeah, Shuffle Draw 8 is insane, and this is one of the few like decent draw supporters that we have, so definitely look out for this one later. Energy Pickup is the worst best card ever. I have had no luck with this so far. I'm hoping that changes for later on today, because I am almost definitely playing this. It is insane. Item-based energy acceleration. I don't know if we've even had supporter-based energy acceleration yet, so this is kind of nuts. If heads, search your discard pile for a basic energy, flip it, you know, like attach it to one of your Pokemon. You can flip it over if you like, but it doesn't do anything. Yeah, so this is just ridiculous, right? Any energy that can go to any Pokemon is acceleration for every type. A lot of types just don't have acceleration right now, and it's even recovery because it gets them out of the discard. which is crazy. Pokéradar reads insane. Apparently it's not actually that good, and I haven't managed to justify slotting it into decks yet. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose as many Pokemon as you find there, show them to your opponent, put them into your hat. The catch is like it's 2 cards less than a Master Ball, but it lets you get every Pokemon that you find rather than just one, which is pretty good. Also, because it says as many as you like, 0 is a number, so you do not have to take anything if you just don't want the Pokemon to come up. Unlike Master Ball, which, as much as I disagree with it, forces you to take one. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Stow Point Temple is a good new stadium. Every Pokemon that isn't evolved that's in play, this counts level X's, by the way, because they are not classed as evolved Pokemon, but they're also not basics. Gain plus 20 HP. So, like, the Uxie or the Mewtwo down here will be at 140 instead of 120. Likewise, Riolu, 80 HP. Pretty respectable. Stark Mountain lets you move a fire or fighting energy from any one of your Pokemon to another of your Pokemon, so long as the recipient is fire or fighting. So it's really good with a Regirock that's in this set, we'll get to later, because that can recycle energy from the discard, fighting energy specifically. So you can use that to accelerate into your fighting team. Really nice, actually. Very, very good stadium to have around. We'll probably see it at some point, if not today. Technical machines are back, except this time they do not discard themselves at the end of the turn, so they are just permanent attacks at this point. This is how you'll see them later too, although I believe they get reclassified to tools in Gen 5 onwards, whenever they do show up. These ones give you a 0 energy attack. Evolutor lets you evolve your Pokemon. It's the same as Jirachi's Make-A-Wish, or Fione that's in the format at the moment, so it kind of outclasses that card, we'll say. And then Devolutor is not as powerful as Ancient Technical Machine Rock was, because it only devolves one of the opponent's Pokemon, and it can't devolve a level X, which is good to know, because level X's technically can be devolved, and they put both the level X and the higher stage evolution back, but this one, not so much. Excuse me. We also have Claw and Root Fossil in here because the evolutions are here as well. We might talk about Armaldo as well as we go up. Level X's, I'm going to talk about these as they come, but Magnazone and Ryperia do not have lower stages in the set, so let's talk about them first. Magnazone, this currently goes on top of the one that gives you 0 retreat if you have a metal energy attached, so it synergizes quite well. Electrotrans lets you move lightning and metal energy across your board however you want, which is really cool. So with the body of the previous stage, this means you can then use it to grant 0 retreat wherever you want. So it's expensive to get out, but if you could get it, it's a really good utility mon. And Cyber Shock is very strong. We will see this next set almost definitely. Lightning Metal to do 80. It's a complicated cost, but next set's Magnazones will help out with that. You discard both of those types of energy, and you auto paralyze as well. I think this might be the first time that we're seeing an auto paralysis, so that's obviously very, very strong. And yeah, it's something we can take advantage of, perhaps. Ryperia laments the loss of Delta Mantine, funnily enough, because it's a colossal 170 HP, by the way, the highest level X that we've had so far. Only Wailord beats this in terms of HP at the moment, so absolutely gigantic dude. For 0 energy, discard the top 5 cards of your deck, do 50 damage for every energy card you discarded. Yeah, if we had the Mantine still in format, we'd have been able to do power circulation to put an energy from the discard to the top of the deck, so we could have guaranteed doing 100, 150 or something with that. But that's not something we have access to, so too bad. Up throw for 2 fighting and a colorless does only 60 damage, but it shuffles all of your fighting energy back into the deck. So the idea, of course, is that you are going to be able to recover a bunch of energy with this and do some really funky stuff. Discard with the Hard Crush and just do tons of damage. I don't think it's good enough. I'm sure people have tried this, but there's not a super good Ryperia to evolve from, so meh. It's not even evolution, but you know what I mean. Alright, let's start talking about the holos in the set. Deoxys has all 4 of its forms in here. It keeps its form change power. I think this might be the last time that we see this, at least for a long while. They're not too good this time round, but their stats and stuff obviously are different. 90 HP on the basic form, second tankiest one. Energy Crush for Psychic Colorless is Espeon from Sandstorm's attack, where you do 20 plus 10 for every energy that's on all of the opponent's Pokemon. This would have been a lot stronger when we had double rainbows and scrambles and such, but now it's just kind of underpowered. The strongest one is of course the attack form. This one, 10 less HP, 1 more retreat cost too actually, that can matter. During your next turn, Psychic Boost only does 20 damage for 2 Psychic and Colors, so you are forced to switch away from it, but it's 80 on the initial hit, so that is naturally really strong here. Excuse me, throat's kind of deciding to be a butt. Anyway, Defense Deoxys, 100 HP, so the tankiest of them. Still 2 retreats, so not as ridiculous as you'd expect. Psychic Defense is a Psychic Double Colorless to only do 40 damage, but it prevents all effects of attacks and reduces damage done by 20 on the opponent's next turn. So that's kind of nice. If you can finish off somebody with this, you definitely do so, because it just gives you that extra longevity. But it's free energy, and it's on, yeah, like, just hard to get out, really. Not super keen. Then the Speedform Deoxys is the lowest HP one, but it also has 0 retreat. So one cool thing the Deoxys deck would have going for it is that any Deoxys that you lead with can form change into this one and give you 0 retreat at the start of the turn. Speed Shot is a snipe move, 2 colorless to do 30 damage, but if you do hit the active it doesn't hit for weakness, which is annoying, but what it does do is it punches through all effects of the opponent as well. No resistance, no poke powers, no poke bodies, no any other effects either. So you can use this to hit things such as Mr. Mime, even if you only have 2 energy. You just only do 30 damage instead of 50, which is not particularly good, but whatever. Dragonite, it's really bad, but it's kind of funny. 4 colorless energy, you flip a coin for each of the opponent's Pokemon, and if the flip is heads, that Pokemon takes 50 damage, so we would have to individually flip all the stuff here. It's kind of amusing. Yeah, not very good, obviously, and the basics are horrible as well. They have like 40 HP on the Dratini down here. Really bad, so whatever. Frostlass, I think, is good. I kind of got too mad to test this one at the, Wednesday, so whoops. Destiny Bond is bad, but whatever. You discard a Psychic, and during your opponent's next turn, if Frostlass gets KO'd, the attacker gets KO'd as well. Okay. Too easy to play around, really. And it's a discard, so it's not very good. But Icy Breath is quite nice. 1 water, 1 colorless, 40 damage, and sleep, and you put 1 damage counter on each of the opponent's bench Pokemon. Damage counter, not damage, which can matter, can actually pierce through certain things. And yeah, it's pretty solid actually. Just a nice little cheap attacker. The problem is the endgame. I think you've got to have something else to go with it, but Omastar from the previous set can mass devolve, and that's what I was trying to play, so kind of neat. Giratina, this one isn't too good, I don't think, but it does get level X's and other forms and stuff in the next set, I believe, or the set after. It might be the set after, because Platinum. Shadow Force forces you to snipe 20, but regardless of whether you can snipe or not, it flips a coin, and if heads, it's agility, so that's kind of cool. Not amazing though. And Brutal Edge just takes too many energy. 2 Psychic, 2 colorless to do just 50, but it does do 10 more for every damage counter on the opponent, so in a spread deck, if you could get the energy on this thing, it would be good. But again, anything that attacks for more than 2 energy is pushing it right now, so I don't know if that's gonna help. And one of the reasons it's pushing it is because of Gliscor over here. Gliscor does have 2 forms in this set. The other one is down here. It technically has more HP, but it's also really bad, so we're not going to bother talking about that one. What we want is this one. 2 very good attacks on here. For 0 energy, you either burn or poison the opponent's active, and then you can choose to return the Gliscor back to the hand, so it scoops itself up, which is fantastic in a format that isn't very good at one-hit KOing this guy. And then Pester for Fighting Colorless does 40, but if the opponent has a special condition on them, it does 80 instead, which is pretty solid when you consider this thing levels up into this behemoth. Gliscor level X gets 110 HP and 0 retreat actually. The Gligar has 1 retreat, so important to note, both Gligar and Gliscor. When you level up into Gliscor level X, it auto paralyzes and poisons the opponent's active. which is ridiculous. Night Slash also does 60 for fighting colorless, which is respectable numbers, and you can switch the Gliscor with one of your bench Pokemon, which you typically would, just to keep it protected, but more likely you are going to use that Shoot Poison power, and then use Burning Poison to burn the opponent as well, bounce the Gliscor back to hand, that bounces the level X back to hand, and then you can reuse the level X power on something else. We don't quite have Broken Time Space to make that great yet, and I have a feeling this is going to get banned before we get that, unfortunately, but it's real good. There's so many things you can do with that. Pester is also just a really good attack to go with that too, so definitely expect to see at least one Gliscor deck. Matt's going to play it for sure, and like I said, Sai's probably playing it too, so definitely expect to see it later. Heatran, interesting. We don't have the level X for it yet. I think that's next set. But once during your turn before you attack, you can move a fire energy from one of your Pokemon to the Heatran. There's a rare one that I'll go over in a set that does the same for Metal. So there is that. And then Magma Storm for 2 fire and 2 colorless. Very expensive attack. But it does 40 damage base. Discard as many basic energy as you like from the Heatran. Do 20 more for each one you discarded. It's interesting. It's weak to water, so it's automatically bad, unfortunately, for this set. But it's intriguing. If you discard 2, it's like 80, I suppose. It's not really that powerful, but the Heatran level X in the next set makes it so that you recover a lot of the energy you discard. So it isn't quite as expensive as it looks, but it's still very awkward and very hard to pull off. Not exactly sure how you deal with it yet, but the damage cap is there. You can do a lot with this thing if you discard enough energy, and being able to recover some of them. There's something there, I just don't think it's enough. One of the reasons it's not enough is this absolute behemoth over here. Kingdra is probably the single best deck of the format, and it's not even close right now. Dragon Pump is insane. 1 water energy, do 40, but if you discard 2 cards in your hand, it does 60 and snipes 20 to one of the opponent's bench Pokemon. You can pretty much always discard with this. We've still got Claydol in the format. Yuxi, you can see hovering down here as well. Gives you another potential draw a bunch. So you're always going to have cards to discard. And if you just discard the energy, Aqua Stream is really nice because you set your discard for as many water as you like. Show them to your opponent, put them into the hand, put them into the deck even. Do 10 damage for each one. But it doesn't cost any energy, so even if you run out of energy entirely, you can still Aqua Stream with a Kingdra, and it's ridiculous. It's really hard to KO this thing in one hit, reliably, and if you don't KO it in one hit, it's only a 1 energy attacker, right? So Super Scoop Up is just kind of insane to pick it up. So yeah, this is easily the best card in the set, at least at this current point in time. And I'm pretty sure Pepper's playing this one just to get it banned this week. Very, very frustrating to go against if you just have like a little bit of poor luck. This is one of the things I'm like, we banned Leafeon, which is unfortunate because Leafeon would have been one of the few like really good checks to this thing, but you know, it is what it is. Luxray, it's kind of cool. It's got 0 retreat, and its attacks are relatively efficient. Rivalry, if the opponent's got any level X's in play, it does 50 more damage. This is really solid against the 2 best decks of this set. Not so good against Gliscor. Gliscor is kind of like number 3, but because it is weak to water as well. I didn't mention that, but yeah, if your Gliscor ever gets caught by a Kingdra, then it is 100% dead. So watch out for that. But yeah, like, it does really well with level X's in play, but its attacks are fine into the expected metagame, even if you don't. Plasma for 2 colorless does 40 and gets a lightning from the discard automatically, and Shock Bolt for 2 lightning and colorless, bit awkward on the attack cost, but we get there. 100 damage, and discard all lightning energy on Luxray. Now the Kingdra is plus 30 to lightning, so this will one-shot Kingdra, and Plasma is enough to one-shot the other level X's we're expecting to see here, and Shock Bolt just takes out the Mewtwo pretty much all the time as well. So there's a lot of good stuff going for this card. Also, there is a Shinx in this set that lets you search your deck for a lightning energy and attach it to itself, so it also has its own acceleration on the lower stages. There's a lot to like here. It's maybe just a little bit awkward that it takes 2 colorless and then 2 lightning and a colorless for its 2 attacks. You can work around that. Magnazone I'm just going to mention because it's Wossy's card, that's it. It's not very good, most of them never really are. Too expensive. Does a fair amount of damage, but nah, not really. Metagross, I don't like it. I think Pepper was going to potentially try it in Kingdra. I don't see it, because I think your red candies are better spent on the Kingdra itself. It has a gust Pokemon catcher effect, well nowadays Pokemon reversal, that sort of thing. Once during your turn you can flip a coin and gust if you get it right, if you get heads. Extra Comet Punch is worthless, so don't even bother with that attack. It's one of these ones that does more damage if you use it in the next turn, but that effect goes away if it gets benched, so lame. Speaking of lame here, Mewtwo, this one is not very good, but it gives me a chance to talk about Mewtwo X, so we'll go into that. Hypnoblast 10 plus Auto Sleep, sure. Psychic for Psychic and double colorless, 40 plus 10 for each energy on the defending Pokemon, sure. Most of the attacks you've seen here are pretty cheap, so it's only going to do like 50 for free, 60 for free, not particularly good. But the level X is a gatekeeper that as we go further in here. Because Psy Barrier is insane. Prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, done to Mewtwo by the opponent's Pokemon that isn't an evolved Pokemon. So, SP decks are coming in a couple of sets time, and they are pure basics. This card just blanks them entirely if you can get it out, so absolutely ridiculous. Giga Burn is also worth noting too. 2 Psychic and a Colorless is expensive, but the good Mewtwo has energy absorption, so you get the stuff back that way. 120, discard all energy attached to it. Yeah, 120 is always a strong number to look at. It is just shy of KOing the stage 2s, but we have plus power in format, we've got Bucks training in format. Later on we'll have Crobat, we can fix the numbers. The numbers are not a problem there. It's good enough to the point where, yeah, this card is going to be insane, and look out for it. I'm probably going to try and build this for later today, actually. Politoed, there's actually in Lost Origin is a very similar idea to this, where if you've got Poliwag, Poliwell, and Poliwrath in play, you do more damage. That one is a bit better because you don't have to have them all in play, it just does extra damage per one you have of a different type. This one though, no, you need Poliwag, Poliwell, Poliwrath, and Politoed all in play at the same time, and there's no Ditto or Zoroark or anything like that that can let you cheat the other evolution in play, so you have to have all 4 of your Poliwag available for one, and it's only 40 HP. You have to have the Poliwell out as well as, and then 2 stage 2s from that line as well. All to do 100 base. 100 for 2 is good, don't get me wrong, but like 100 base, 80 if you, like 40 more if you flip heads, 140 if you could do that. Like, cool. How the hell is this working though? It's just stupid. The Poliwrath itself also takes fighting energy, so meh. 1 fighting for 60 is good though, but if Poliwrath was damaged at all by the opponent's attack during the last turn, then it doesn't do any damage at all. This cannot be removed by switching the Poliwrath. I checked the compendium for that. Submission is also okay, but it's another Poliwrath with submission. Again, we've seen this before. 1 fighting, 2 colorless, 90, 20 to itself. Nah, not exactly very good. So yeah, it's too complicated trying to get all the stuff out here, but if you could, it'd be very strong. And they do have different weaknesses, 1 to grass, 1 to lightning, so there is that. Probopass, mostly noting it because it effectively has a metal energy clause on it, so it takes up to 20 less damage for the metal energy that's attached to it, and then Metal Bomber for fighting double colorless does 60, so fighting 2 metal would be the ideal thing here, because you choose bench Pokemon from the opponent up to the amount of metal energy that's attached to the Probopass and do 20 more for each of them. You can use like a multi-energy, I guess, to sort of cheat this out a bit as well, so like maybe you could run this in a pure metal deck. It's just like a bit awkward, right? It takes free energy, it is weak to Kingdra as well, and sniping damage is nice, but are you going to be able to snipe that much? I'm not sure. Rayquaza is an interesting one-hit KO guy. 2 fire, 2 colorless, 150 damage. Discard all the energy attached to it, so rip on that one. I don't know if this works with the Heatran. I forget if Heatran is like, I think it's specifically fire or metal Pokemon, but we'll maybe come back to that next set. Speed gain is interesting. You can't use it if you have another Rayquaza in play, but if you don't, flip until tails once per turn, and for each hedge you get either a basic fire or a basic lightning energy out of the discard and attach it to the Ray. There might be some ways of not necessarily streaming this attack, but if you can have another attack online in the meantime, there might be ways of getting to this like every second turn, which would be pretty cool. But you could also just, you know, suck with it and just not get it. I don't know. Seems pretty high roll to me. Speaking of high roll, Exeggutor can't attack until your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards left. They couldn't even give it like a normal thing in the TCG. They had to give it slow start as well. Also, look at this attack cost, man. This is not a dragon Pokemon. Fire, not even fire. That would be weird. We don't have Regiflare yet. But maybe we do in Gen 9, who knows. Water Fighting Metal Colorless, I'm getting distracted here. 120 damage. If the defending Pokemon has any damage counters on them already though, it only does 40 instead. So, yikes. I don't know. There's a much better Exeggutor down here though. This does, it only has 100 HP as opposed to the 120, but honestly that's not that important in comparison. Because its Gigaton Punch is just much better. 3 colorless energy, 60 damage, okay. But if you flip heads, it's 80 and snipe 20 to one of the opponent's bench. That's actually pretty good. As a colorless attacker as well, it's very solid. And if you attach an energy to the Gigas, you remove all special conditions from it. So, yeah, pretty good. It's weak to Gliscor though, so the main deck that would do special condition stuff, it kind of dies against. So that's a bit of a shame. Excuse me, throat's a bit choked up. So, okay, Spiritomb. It puts damage counter on all Pokemon that are already damaged when it comes into play. So if you are a spread deck, there is a reasonable shot at using this. I might try and tech one of this in if I play Frostlass, because yeah, that's spreading damage around quite a bit. And then Transfer Pain for 1 Psychic, it moves 1 damage counter from one of your Pokemon to one of the opponent's Pokemon, which is fine. I think the problem with this is it's a 2 energy retreat cost thing, which is a bit difficult to get out of the active at the start, so I don't think you can play too many of this card, but Curse Breath is really solid. Just adding more damage to the opponent's board is always good, right? So you just gotta be careful because it adds to your board as well, and it also takes a bench slot. That is the big problem with it, right? But yeah, maybe as a one-off I could see it. Yanmega! I played this in a weird Yanmega Kabutops deck because it's a 0 energy spread damage thing. Yeah, 0 energy, 10 damage to each of the opponent's bench Pokemon, and 10 to the active is a natural thing because it just does 10 damage. Your opponent then has to switch their active, which sometimes is bad, but most of the time is pretty good. The second attack is too expensive, but we'll go over it anyway. 2 grass, 2 colorless to do 60, so maybe you could use this in Sceptile decks. If the defending Pokemon already has 2 or more damage counters on it, this attack does 80 instead, and then you switch the Yanmega with one of your bench Pokemon. I might try this actually. I mean, Sceptile Mega actually sounds kind of neat, because then you've got like 2 energy for its attack. I don't know. I didn't really consider that beforehand, so we'll see. But Sonic Wave is pretty good by itself, so solid little guy here. Armaldo is potentially the format breaker, but unfortunately damage mods exist, so it's not super good here. Fossil Armor, if the Armaldo gets damaged by an attack, if that attack does 60 or less damage, you take 0 instead. So the Kingdra's breakpoint is 60, right? That's the main idea for it. Discard 2 does 60, snipe 20. While the Armaldo doesn't get affected by that because it's only doing 60. The problem is, it isn't reduced by 60, it is negate if 60. So the second the plus power goes down, this Armaldo takes like 70 damage at that point, which is two-shotting it. It does require the opponent to have damage mods every turn, which isn't necessarily that prevalent. Like, Kingdra will play 4 plus power, but do they have it every turn? Hard to say. If you can get enough of these out, maybe you could just blank it, but that's a bit of a tall order because it's a fossil, so you know. Crush Claw, on the other hand, is I want to say it's not good, but I could see why it would be. 2 Fighting and Colors to do 60. There are ways of accelerating fighting stuff here. I was doing it in the Carbotops deck, so I don't think the energy cost is the problem here. It's the damage. But during the next turn, if an attack does damage to the defending Pokemon, it does 40 more. I think the problem though is that if they like switch, that goes away, I'm pretty sure. If I remember this word right, because I think this is an effect on the Pokemon that you attack, so it's like it does 60 the first time and then 100 the next time? Because it's not Armaldo that's doing more damage. It's not worded the same way as like Extra Comet Punch, where it's like during your next turn, Metagross's Extra Comet Punch does 100 instead, right? So I'm pretty sure this doesn't work very well, unfortunately. I'm going to skip over the Lake Trio at the moment because I'm going to go over those as the last bit because they have level X's down here as well, and that's rather important to note, but there are some other things that are worth going over first. Credilli is a curious one for like snipe based decks. 1 grass energy, 30 damage, and you can force the opponent into switching, like you choose what comes in as well, and if you KO with this attack you heal the Credilli entirely, which is cool, but ultimately not very strong, just cool. It's also a fossil, right, so big rip on that one. Ditto almost is the same as Ditto from Fossil, but it no longer has the unilateral rainbow energy thing, so you need to be able to pay for the attacks you're copying. But it copies the opponent's max HP, it has the same attacks, it has... yeah, so like as long as it's active, its max HP is the same as the opponent's active, and it can use the attacks. It can't use Poké Powers and such, but that doesn't matter, it's mostly using the attacks anyway. Yeah, this could be really good against enemy Kingdra stuff, actually. I may tech this in today. It would be very funny. Fortress is interesting because technically it could do 0 damage to itself if you somehow get 4 special medals on it. Iron Shell, I think, is... yeah, it's a mandatory thing from what I was told. It was errated. So whenever you attach a basic energy from your hand to the Fortress, you have to flip a coin, and if tails, every Pokemon in play that isn't a Fortress takes 2 damage. 20 damage even. Which is weird, right? Very strange effect, but I could see some uses for it at least. Explosion is also like super powerful, and it doesn't kill itself automatically, which is fun. 100 for 2 metal, 2 colorless, and it does 40 to itself. There's a deck with that, but I don't think I'm the one to do it, to be honest. But I could see it. If I lost to this, I wouldn't be surprised. Groudon. Kyogre is similar in the sense that they're both 100 HP dudes. They both have this 0 energy attack that lets you accelerate up to 2 basic fighting for Groudon. Water for Kyogre, obviously. Accelerate 2 energy from your hand to 1 of your Pokemon. And then they both have an attack for 2 of their color plus a colorless, and they discard their 2 color. So in this case, 2 fighting and colors to do 100, and then you do 10 to each of your bench Pokemon. A little bit unfortunate. 100 is a decent number, but not quite strong enough for this. But the acceleration aspect might be worth it. I don't know. The Kyogre is, in my opinion, much better, and I believe we will see this later with Blastcat. Because you do 60 only, which is not a lot for 60 discard 2, but you also do 20 to all of the opponent's bench. So the only reason I'm not using this at the moment is because I think it's hard to chain this attack, but oh man, that is a big payout, so definitely worth looking at. This Heatran, this one was the one that I played with Togekiss in the middle of the week, but it dies to Kingdra, so there's no point in playing it right now. I think this would be better with Leafeon anyway. This one lets you move metal energy around once per turn to the Heatran itself, so kind of the same idea as the Flash Fire, but for metal stuff. And for any free energy, 40 damage, but for every metal that you have on the Heatran, you flip a coin and do 20 more damage for each heads. So a little bit like the old Exeggutor explosion type stuff. But it's pretty solid actually. If you can get like 5-6 energy on this thing, and special metal energy do count as well, so you can tank a little bit with this too. It's actually kind of okay. It doesn't force you to discard the energy too. So there's something to it. It's just maybe a bit too slow and a bit too unreliable, and you know, it dies to Kingdra, so how good is it really, unfortunately. Jirachi is a very interesting one here. No energy for search your deck for any card. Put it onto the top of the deck, mind you, but that sets your next draw up, and it's for no energy too, so you don't even have to open an energy card for this thing. Really, really cool card. Doom Desire I don't think is any good because if they switch then the effect goes away. 2 metal to discard all energy, and then if they somehow stay in they're knocked out at the end of the turn, but there's nothing keeping them in, so it's pretty bad. The Regis, 2 of them are good anyway. Regice over here, you discard 2 cards from your hand, and then if the opponent's active isn't evolved, you force them to switch, which is pretty good. Ice Reflect is actually kind of fine too. 2 water and a colorless to do only 50 is pretty bad, but if Regice was damaged last turn, even if it wasn't active by the looks of it, if it was damaged last turn, it's auto paralysis on that too. So if you could somehow charge this up, it's kind of cool. You're mostly using it for the power though. This lets you discard cards even if the opponent's active isn't evolved. Even if they don't have a bench, I'm pretty sure you can do this. So this is just really good in decks that need discard synergy. Mewtwo will probably like this actually, so I'll probably try that later on too. We've talked about the Gigas, but the Regirock is really good here too. If you have a fighting energy in your discard, you can discard 2 cards and then attach a fighting from your discard to the Regirock. Unfortunately, you have to have an energy first for this one, so it isn't just a free discard too. But yeah, this is really good for the fighting decks to keep stuff in play, and then Start Mountain can move the energy from this to another fighting Pokemon. So very solid. You could actually stream Groudon attacks with this, which is pretty good. Its own attack is pretty bad, and it's weak to Kingdra, so you know, not amazing in that aspect, but still is really cool nonetheless. Registeel only heals 30 from itself if you discard 2, so that's not very good. Moving on. Shaymin is really annoying. This is the other component of Sai's crazy build this week, so yeah, it's mostly because you can Night Slash and or Burning Poison switch into this thing, and then if this gets KO'd during by damage from an attack, you put 4 damage counters on the attacker, and each of the opponent's Pokemon that has the same name as that attacker. So yeah, kind of crazy actually. Just 4 damage when it dies, and it's got no bottom stats, so it's no retreat cost on this thing. Curse and Deceive is also kind of neat. For 1 colorless energy, you put 3 damage counters on the defending Pokemon, but if Shaymin already has damage on it somehow as well, then it confuses them too. 30 auto confuse is quite nice for 1 energy, so yeah, cool card. Torkoal is just a little bit hard to get out the active for hit and run decks, but if it is your active, then all of your bench Pokemon do not get affected by anything from the opponent's attacks, so that's pretty slick. Its attack is bad though, right? Like 1 fire, 1 colorless to do 30, and if heads burn paralysis, yeah, no, just not strong enough here. What else is that's cool? The Vileplume does some status condition stuff if you attach to it with specifically grass or psychic energy, or if you put a multi-energy on it, it does both at the same time, which is very silly. It's like poison and sleep, I believe. Yeah, sleep for grass, poison for psychic. Its own attack, if you flip heads, is a full-on like trainer lock, like modern day trainer lock. No trainer support at all stadiums next turn, which is extremely irritating. But it only does 60, it's for free energy, and it's on the stage too, it's just not happening. Castforms have got some new things in here. They also have that temperament thing from before, so they can switch forms, but they're all terrible. Hail is probably the best one here, because like 2 colors, 10 damage to each of the opponent's Pokemon. That's expensive for that kind of thing, but it is on the basics, so kind of whatever. Exeggutor is a card that exists here. For no energy, each player counts the number of cards in the opponent's hand and then shuffle draws that number. If you get your hand down to 0 and use this thing, the opponent just doesn't get a hand, which is very, very annoying. Claydol can put a big stop to that, but we'll get to a way that we're stopping that later. It's this guy over here. We'll get to that at the end. So yeah, its attack is bad, but there's a meme deck involving that for sure that could be very stupid. Houndoom is weak to, Kingdra. It dies in 1 shot, so it's bad. But it does do 40 extra damage if your opponent has more bench than you, which is cool, because its first attack, 20 for 1 colorless, and if the opponent has any damage counters on them already, it's burn, so 60 potential burn for 1 energy is good. Bright Flame is 2 fire for 60, and if tails, you discard 2 fire on this thing, but if you've got Revenge Fang in play, that's 60, that's like 100 damage for 2 energy, which is respectable. We don't have DRE anymore though, so it's not a 1 attachment thing, so not as streamable as it looks. Speaking of missing multi-based energy, Lantern over here would have been great with them. Energy Split is still nice though. 1 lightning energy, 30 damage to each of the opponent's Pokemon that has any energy attached to them. The Kingdra deck especially, as well as being weak to lightning, does tend to put a lot of energy down because they do tend to, on like separate Pokemon, because their attack is only 1 energy, right? So they're just charging up the next Kingdras. So you could do some decent spread with that. And then Aqua Bolt really misses the fact we don't have Scrabble anymore. 1 lightning, 2 colorless, 60 plus 10 for every water energy that's on the Lantern. If you put a multi on and just put waters otherwise, this can do 90 for free, which is respectable, but this would have been a really good Scrabble target, right? Like 90 for 1 energy would have just been so good. So, unfortunate, but it might still see some play. Lucario, alternative to the other one, does a bit more damage overall. Focus Blast is just 1 fighting snipe 30 instead of 1 fighting 30 or 1 colorless 30 to the active, not affected by resistance. So yeah, one colorless snipe 30 is pretty good, or 1 fighting snipe 30. Yeah, strong attack. And then Spike Lariat is 2 fighting and a colorless, so a little bit more expensive than the base Lucario, but it does 60 instead of 40, and instead of sniping 20, if the opponent's already got any damage counters on them, it does 80 instead. Yeah, 80 for free is what close combat is, so being able to do close combat without the damage increasing, pretty strong. So yeah, I believe Sai's playing this one as a trial of the thing, so kind of cool. Mightyena is mostly noteworthy as a tech option. AMU is a deck that we're about to go into and can use this as a tech against the Mewtwo level X. If the defending Pokemon isn't an evolved Pokemon, it cannot attack, retreat, or use any Pokepowers during the next turn. 30 damage for 1 Dark as well. That's pretty much the only attack you use, but if you are going against a deck that's playing Mewtwo, you kind of have to play something against it, and AMU really doesn't play anything against it normally. So as a 1-1 with multi-energies already in that deck, it's fine. It gets the job done, it stops the opponent from doing their thing. Also resists Psychic, but it still gets one-shot by Giga Burn anyway, so whatever. Ninjas can get a Shedinja from your hand or discard pile into play when you evolve into it, which is cool, but Chip Off is not a great payout for that. You really wanted someone like Night Slash from Gen 5 on this thing for this effect, really. But, I mean, if the opponent's got a large hand, and large hands do stack up a bit in this format, at least if you're not playing against Kingdra, they discard below this, but still. Yeah, could be okay. There's Starmie, which is pretty interesting in here. Star Boomerang's not super good, but it does still happen sometimes. 1 water, 30 damage, you can return the Starmie and all cards attached to it into the hand. There is actually a reason to use this, and it's kind of funny because I did this with Staryu for Misty, where that, if you flipped heads, put the card back into the hand. But this plus power attaches at the moment, so if you have all of your plus powers, you do like 70 and then bounce them all back into hand. That's pretty sick, actually. And then Core Flash is what you actually want it for. 1 Psychic Energy. If the opponent has any Pokepowers or Pokebodies in play, you choose one of those Pokemon and snipe 50 to it. Snipe 50 is pretty good. Also has 0 retreat. So yeah, I mean, this can clean up stuff pretty readily. I might have to try this later. There's some cool stuff you can do with that. It doesn't hit Kingdra though, so a bit of a rough one there. There's a bunch of Unknown in this set. I think the best ones to talk about though are Unknown R. This is actually the same thing that was seen in Vespiquen decks later in Gen 7, right? Farewell Letter was the name of it there. This is just retire. If it's on the bench, you may discard the Unknown and all cards attached to it and draw a card. So that's pretty good. The other one to note is Unknown W. It's a chunky boy, 90 HP, 3 energy retreat too, but again, we have Moonlight in format, Moonlight Stadium, so you could make it have 0 retreat. But its body is what you want it for. It's a hit and run target, really. As long as it's your active Pokemon, any damage done by the opponent's attacks is reduced by 10. This is all attacks and all parts of attacks, so snipe damage is also reduced here. So anything that's like 40 put 10 on, or like 60 put 10 on all of your opponent's bench or something, yeah, that 10 is negated or reduced in the form of like Kingdra and such. So you can really cut the opponent's potential down a bit with this. And then hidden power for 1 psychic, 2 colorless does 50, draw a card. Like, that's fine, but it's hard to charge up. You're never really going to get to that point. That's about it as far as those go. If you do want to play the Metagross for some reason, for 1 metal energy, the metal chain, when you attach that metal, lets you just get the Beldum out of your deck. This is not quite the same as the magnetic search thing, but it's still pretty solid, so there is that. And I think that's it as far as the noteworthy Pokemon go here. So let's talk about the other best deck of the format now, AMU. It doesn't quite have all of its stuff yet, but the late trio in this set are absolutely insane and do pair very well with these two from Mysterious Treasures. So, all of them are going to see huge play. Mesprit maybe less so, so let's talk about that one first. When you bench the Mesprit, it prevents the opponent from using any Poké Powers during their next turn, which is very, very good. It's just hard to fit onto the bench, really. Extrasensory for 2 Psychic only does 20 damage, but if you share the hand size with the opponent, it does 70 instead, which is actually a hell of a lot. There may be times that this comes up in the deck itself, so that's worth it. Azelf is the next one that will probably see a one-off play in quite a lot of decks. Again, hard to fit bench space for, but it's worth it. When you use the Azelf, when you bench it, you look at all of your face-down prize cards, you can choose any Pokemon you find there, and switch it with a card in your hand. And then you just get to put your prize cards back in whatever order that you want. So you actually get to just see all of your prizes, you know exactly where they are. Excellent tool. Even if there isn't a Pokemon in there, but there usually will be. Very, very strong. Lockup as an attack is okay too. 1 Psychic, 20 damage, prevents the opponent retreating next turn. That does come up sometimes. So yeah, really, really good opening attack as well. Makes it difficult to play Unknown Q because that dies in 1 hit and you could just get donked at the start of the game. So very good attack. And then Uxie, oh god. One of the strongest cards of all time. That's all that needs to be said with it here. When you put Uxie from your hand to your bench, you may draw cards until you have 7 in your hand. This is a basic Pokemon that does this. So it doesn't even give up multiple prizes either, like Shaymin did later on. There have been many forms of this, like Crobat is still in the modern day, is a hard once per turn, draw until 6, gives up 2 prizes, is easily one-shot by stuff as well. And it is still prevalently played. Not as ubiquitous as this, but it is still played in a lot of decks because it is just that powerful. Uxie can be searched off of Roseanne as well. It's absolutely insane. We have an easy way of getting whatever Pokemon we want down and then a Uxie to draw like 5 cards or whatever. Insane. But it gets better because it's still, the Shaymin comparison is very much there. 1 colorless energy, 20 damage. You may put Uxie and all cards attached to it to the bottom of your deck in any order. So it actually can recycle itself and recycle your bench slot too. This card is unbelievably powerful and will be seeing play in every single deck, even if it's only a one-off, usually 2 though. But that's not all, because of course AMU as a deck wouldn't work unless they had a little bit more firepower than that, and we have level X's to go over as well. Azelf level X gives your Psychic Pokemon no weakness, and Psychics are almost always weak to themselves, so that's really cool. Deep Balance chooses one of the opponent's Pokemon and puts a damage counter on it for every energy that the opponent has in play. Not the strongest attack now that we've lost all the double rainbow stuff again, but there are still situations where this snipe will be good, and it's snipe damage counter, not snipe damage, so it doesn't get blocked by damage reduction stuff, so that can matter. Overall the weakest of the 3, but still decent. Uxie level X is one of those cards I've been told wasn't actually played very often, but it was mostly for space reasons, because honestly this card reads absolutely insane, especially when you're already playing Uxie anyway. Trade-off lets you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose one of them to go into the hand, put the other one onto the bottom of the deck, which is really cool. You can only use one of these powers per turn, even if you do get 2 Uxie level X in play, but that's fine, you're only playing one anyway. And then Zen Blade, any 2 energy for 60 damage. You can't use it in consecutive turns unless you switch out, but that's any 2 colors for 60 in a good attacking type too. There's a lot of reasons to love this card, and you can still use Psychic Restore as well to bottom deck it once it's taken some damage, so very, very strong. But the real attacker in the deck is the Mesprit level X. Healing Look for 0 energy is nice against spread decks. Remove 3 damage counters from each of your bench Pokemon. Annoyingly doesn't heal the Mesprit, which is dumb, but whatever. Supreme Blast is what we want here. 2 Psychic for 200 damage. Charizard say what? But you both have to discard all the energy on the Mesprit, so you can't even stockpile energy, you've just got to straight discard them. But if you don't have all 3 level X's in play for the late trio, it doesn't do anything. So obviously there's a lot of setup for the deck, but it isn't too hard to get out, to be totally honest with you. All 3 of these have got 90 HP as well, by the way, but Snowpoint Temple works on them, so they get to 110, so they can tank a hit, and yeah, it's actually a really solid deck right now. Like, you've got consistent damage with the Uxie is pretty good. You've got the Lockup and Psychic Restore are pretty good. Quick attacks as well. And you've even got the Absolute Bomb that just one-shots any card that you lay your eyes on. It's solid. The problem is it dies to Mewtwo, but that's what you tech for. And finally, that is it. Man, this is like the longest one I've done so far, but there's 146 cards in this set, and there's a ton that was worth talking about, so I can understand why it ended up being so long. Yeah, unfortunately, despite that, I think most of what we're going to see is exactly 2 cards in this set. We're going to see Kingdra, and we might see AMU, and nobody's going to play anything else, because Kingdra is just far too strong. I say that, but I already have other stuff I want to do, so we'll see. I have a good AMU deck built, so I might end up doing that, but I want to test the Mewtwo stuff, because it'd be cool and funny, and yeah, I don't know. Anyway, if you've stuck around this long, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this informative. My goodness, these sets are just going to get more and more extreme as we go along too, I think, because there's a lot of good stuff coming in this year, and we'll just have to see how it goes. So yeah, till next time though, take care.